Let's start with the quarterback position. We're going to go offense, then defense, starting with quarterbacks. Let's go ahead and bring me a little bit here on Anthony Gordon. What's your take on him so far? I feel like all the passing yards, all that stuff in the Washington State offense, I've seen some people liking what he's bringing to the table. But again, I think some of that's Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, I'm not his biggest fan. I just don't think the decision-making is nearly on the same level of Gardner Minshew. Now, obviously, he can make himself some money with the strong performance there, but I haven't seen it quite with him. I think of this quarterback group there, he is clearly in a tier below guys like Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, maybe even Jalen Hurts in my mind in terms of pro prospects.
So let's stay on that top three there. I think those are the three most important names that are going to be in the quarterback group at the Senior Bowl. Justin Herbert, who's kind of a late declaration. I think he's easily the best quarterback prospect, one of the best prospects that's going to be down there in Mobile. Every team will be looking at Justin Herbert, especially those at the top of the first round looking to bring in a quarterback that's not named Joe Burrow or Tua Tagovailoa. And with Justin Herbert, I think he has a huge opportunity to rise here because if there's one thing Justin Herbert's good at is showing off his arm on air, and I think he's got one of the best arm talent in this class. I think he has a huge opportunity at the Senior Bowl to really blow away some coaches and have them fall in love.
Yeah, I think this reminds me kind of that 2016 quarterback class, I believe it was, when it was, I think, like Cody Kessler down there, a handful of other kind of mid-round guys, and then Carson Wentz. And Carson Wentz just looked like he was on another level physically from the rest of the quarterbacks down there. Here, I got the list in front of me now. Jeff Driscoll, Kevin Hogan it was, and Cody Kessler on that North squad. Pretty rough in terms of the quarterback position, but that's why he stood out and he really made himself some money. I could see that being the case for Justin Herbert in that because so much of it, like you said, is against air. It's not really, you're not seeing blitz packages. You're not seeing a lot of stuff you'll see on Sundays or even on Saturdays. They have to play single high safety looks. It's either cover one or cover three. You know what you're getting, and so you should be able to carve it up. And I think in a situation like that with Justin Herbert, he will by far look the best of the group there, even if the tape shows some issues that were detailed.
Let's talk the other quarterbacks here, too. Jordan Love has been pegged as this back end of the first-round quarterback because of that ceiling he does have. The tools are easy to fall in love with. The high end is very nice. The low end, not so great. You look at him as a prospect that does have a low floor in the NFL. Where are you at right now with Jordan Love, and what opportunity does he have at the Senior Bowl to kind of rise his stock or kind of cement his stock as this back of the first-round player?
I think the biggest thing he can prove is that his technique and his fundamentals he's got them down pat a little better than he showed during the regular season this year because he was all over the place with his footwork at times. I think you just saw him get lazy and get sort of trust his arm too much and not step into every throw, and that cost him. I mean, he had top 5 in terms of turnover-worthy plays in all of college football this past season because of some of that. And so I do think that you'll see with him the biggest thing he can prove is just that that's all cleaned up. He's not throwing off platform. He's not trying to make plays that he just simply can't make. He trusts, if he trusts his arm, trusts his sort of footwork and technique there, that's the biggest thing he can prove to NFL evaluators.
All right, last quarterback I want to bring up here. I know there's some other Steven Montez, Shea Patterson, but of that group, I really need to talk Jalen Hurts. Because Jalen Hurts, I think, is this kind of a polarizing player, largely because, and I've been asked this on several radio hits in recent weeks, is that Jalen Hurts, is there an opportunity for him in the NFL now that Lamar Jackson has had this success as a mobile-first type of quarterback? With Jalen Hurts, though, he's not even in the same ballpark of athlete as Lamar Jackson, and he's not even in the same ballpark as a passer. I think he's not just a tier below what Lamar Jackson is, maybe 2 tiers below what Lamar Jackson brings to the table. And with that being said, do you see a role for him in an NFL offense like Greg Roman's potentially?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where he has to go.
Yeah, of course.
That's what he has to do, and I think this setting is not going to be great for him. He's not going to look good in a one-on-one sort of setting or in this an offense where his legs aren't a weapon. I just don't think he has the accuracy, arm strength, that sort of stuff that's going to wow any evaluators. It's just not going to happen. 2 of his biggest strengths, his legs and his ability to protect the football, just really aren't going to come out over a setting like this. So I don't think this is going to be great for him, but it's necessary because I do think that NFL evaluators, are going to be looking and saying, hey, can I fit this guy in my offense if I'm not running? Like you mentioned, like a Greg, if you're not using him as a rushing threat, can he pass? Can he hold his own as a passer? And so if you're someone like, the the New England Patriots. Can he be a backup to Tom Brady? I don't think he can be, but I'm just saying this is where he could prove that to NFL evaluators.
Let's go ahead and go to the running back position. The quarterback will definitely be interesting. I think Justin Herbert and Jordan Love will draw the most attention. Jalen Hurts right after that. He's an Alabama guy. I think a lot of the fans will be excited to see Jalen Hurts. One thing I'll say on him, and I don't think this can be understated really, is that everywhere I've heard, Dane Brugler brought this up when we had him on the podcast, an awesome dude. Like the character, character evaluation is through the off the charts, really, through the roof with Jalen Hurts. I think that's where he has potential to really wow some coaches and some scouts, the guys who do talk to Jalen Hurts and then start to think about where they can involve him in the offense. All right, let's go to the running back position. This is an unfortunate one because my favorite running back that was going to the Senior Bowl is no longer going. Zach Moss of Utah. He's the highest graded running back in PFF's system, including all running backs at the FBS level that had over 300 offensive snaps this year. Great at forcing missed tackles. Great lateral agility, a guy that I comped to Cadillac Williams on the previous podcast, will no longer be there. And now, looking at this group of running backs, I think names that pop out to me, Eno Benjamin is somewhat of a fun player for Arizona State playing in the Pac-12. I also turned on Darius Anderson's tape of TCU, who I thought had some juice. Where are you at with the running back group here for the Senior Bowl?
So here's the thing. Running back is the least valuable or like the least position that you can glean any information on Senior Bowl.
At the Senior Bowl, yeah.
It's just so difficult to sort of get a feel because, one, you're not tackling, in practices. You're not bringing these guys down. So guys that are elusive or, do win in that sort of manner, you just all of a sudden don't really see it. Now, you can kind of glean their vision. It helps in the running backs versus linebacker one-on-one to some degree. Can a guy catch? But it really... The tape that you get on running backs over the course of their season is far, 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 far more valuable than anything you're going to see the week in Mobile. So of all the positions, running back, not super exciting. But I will say Eno Benjamin is interesting to me because he reminds me a lot of Paul Perkins. But there's a sort of a sliding scale of Paul Perkins to Shady McCoy where some guys who have that sort of the jump cut kings, the guys who will make you miss without even you ever touching them. That's Eno Benjamin. He's going to have missed tackles where you didn't even attempt to really attack because you didn't touch him. He's that kind of player. Didn't work out with Paul Perkins. Worked out really well with Sean McCoy. So there's sort of a spectrum there that he falls on. I just want to see him in the one-on-ones actually against linebackers because that, to me, should be where he wins at the next level.
To give you a better idea of this class, too, without Zach Moss there, none of these running backs earned over an 80.0 overall grade and PFF grade this past season. I think of the names that do kind of wow me, I mentioned Darius Anderson, but LaMichael Pirine has an interesting recruiting background. He's related to Samaje Perine, the Oklahoma back who also played in the NFL. He's also cousins with Miles Jack. He's got an interesting athletic background. I think I'm excited to see if he can separate himself in that regard in some of the drills at the Senior Bowl. I think Keyshawn Vaughn, his tape is fun. His tape is fun to watch. To quote our favorite term, they're fun to watch. But he hammers dudes. A very physical guy. I think.
Yeah, hammers. Jesus Christ.
He lowers his shoulder.
He's a one-cut runner, Keyshawn Vaughn. A very good fit for his own scheme. He was in our top 5 backs heading into the season. He's still in that sort of area. I think he offers a lot. He's very similar to a J.K. Dobbins in that they both have very good vision, both one-cut sort of guys, going to get upfield, get what's blocked, and then a little bit more, but both not crazy dynamic like on the Zach Moss, Travis Etienne, Jonathan Taylor sort of explosiveness scale.
To tie a bow on that, I think running back position, later in the podcast, we're going to talk about our potential risers or guys that we think could elevate themselves. None of the running backs, because one, you can't glean a ton of information from the Senior Bowl, and two, it's not a great group without Zach Moss, and I don't see a lot of them rising.
And also, like a lot of these positions that you're getting sort of more information on, it's because you don't have big sample sizes to begin with. Whether it's like an offensive tackle who hasn't faced a NFL pass rusher his whole career, or whether it's a wide receiver who hasn't been, who's only targeted 60 times in a year. These running backs get 250 carries. You get a big sample size on running backs. You have a good feel for them and what they've done in college football already. So a lot of these guys, you don't really need more information.
To comment on that too, I had someone ask me, what makes the Senior Bowl valuable? What makes it important to the evaluation process? And the first part of that is these matchups you're able to see for a group of 5 players or players that you don't see a lot of one-on-one interaction with. It's a huge opportunity to see how they do against some of the best competition in the country. And two, I do still value that opportunity to meet the players and understand the personality and see what
You're
type
big
of guy.
personality.
Dude, do we need to bring up the Jerry Tillery interview? Do we need to bring up? There are
don't
interviews.
Have to bring up Jerry Tillery ever again on this podcast.
There were interviews where you start to feel like, okay, this is somewhat of a red flag in terms of how they approach certain situations. Let's not dive into Jerry Tillery right now. Let's go ahead and move forward to the wide receiver position. I think this is a very interesting group of wide receivers. I think there are a lot of names
good group.
Yeah, there are a lot of names that I really like. I think Michael Pittman Jr. is one of my favorites. I know you're a big fan of Juwan Jennings of Tennessee. Colin Johnson is going to look insane. You can already tell that guy's going to be just bigger than everybody there, 6'6", wherever he's standing with. And I really like James Prochet of SMU. I think he's an interesting player. Where are you at? What were some of the names that you're looking forward to watching at the Senior Bowl?
This is really a loaded group. I think a couple of the biggest names that I'm looking forward to watching is one, Juwan Jennings, because obviously he's a favorite of mine. Went in the first round of my latest mock draft. I think he's that talented, but he also played a lot of the slot in Tennessee. And he's a big dude who I think can play on the outside and can win on the outside, but we just haven't really seen it. So I want to see him. He will get his chance to win there on the outside. And then I'm going to go with Liberty's Antonio Gandy Golden. I remember before the season, when we were doing the preseason draft guide, Cam Malore, our lead college analyst, was like, you should take a look at this guy to put him in the draft guide. And I'm just like, he's not getting in the draft guide. I'm sorry. He does not have good speed down the football field, but at the same time, he led college football, or was second in college football over the last 2 years in terms of deep reception. So he had a lot. Don't think he has great downfield speed. Don't see that being his game at the next level, but sometimes I'm wrong about it. Sometimes guys who don't have great downfield speed can still be weapons down the football field with other things like body control, how they run routes, how they set up defensive backs, and just being able to stack guys. So we'll see. He'll get his chance here to win deep down the football field against much, much better competition because he only faced a couple Power 5 schools this past year, if I recall correctly.
Well, let's dive into this closely here. Brandon Ayuk of Arizona State. I think he's the guy I see on my timeline a lot. People are kind of falling in love with his production from Arizona State. However, a big opportunity for him, in my opinion, is to see him separate in these one-on-ones on intermediate and deep level routes, because so much of his production is kind of schemed at Arizona State and where he's getting targeted the football. I think Brandon Ayuk has a lot to prove, in my opinion, on how he can separate at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, so we're gonna get to the risers later. He's my bet for one of the risers in this class because I just think he's so explosive and so explosive in and out of his cuts that I do believe he's going to look good in these one-on-ones, I think.
Where are you with Chase Claypool? Chase Claypool, Notre Dame guy, 6'4", 230 pounds. He's huge. Like, this guy's like a big tight end almost. I don't see him playing wide receiver in the NFL.
So I get accused of being Notre Dame homer, and I swear I'm not, because I was low on Miles Boykin last year coming out of Notre Dame. I was like, even when he was drafted in the third, I didn't see him being that worthy of that high a pick. And Chase Claypool, I don't think is worth a day 2 pick either. I just think he's like a 5th, 6th round type of guy. Like he just does not get open at a high rate, and I don't even think like he's that physical. 230 pounds, you'd think this guy should just be beating up college cornerbacks. And you didn't see it. Like, I didn't see that consistently on his tape, that physical dominance. So, yeah, I'm not super high on Chase Claypool. To me, I've said his best bet is to go the Darren Waller route and just bulk up.
That's not even a bad shot.
All of a sudden, call yourself a tight end. You had 15 pounds, you call yourself a tight end. And
at 10 pounds, he calls himself a tight end. He's already
all of a sudden, you're dynamic
pounds.
then at that size.
I got to bring up the name Courtney Davis, because when I turn on the film, there are some routes where you see some of this athletic ability, see some of this speed. He has good releases at the line of scrimmage. I do like his footwork. However, I find myself liking what he's doing, but never seeing him come open. I think there's a chance for him to rise a little bit at the Senior Bowl because he'll have so many opportunities to do some of these one-on-ones. But he needs to show me something at this Senior Bowl if I'm going to really get on board, really.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to break it to you, but he's going to get a 7th UDFA grade in the draft.
I know that's where you're leaning right now.
Did not love his tape whatsoever to speak of. Some guys, if you're not like explosive enough in a big enough package, that's Jesus. Okay. if you're not like dense enough, some guys just are too skinny to when they get contacted, it like robs them of all their speed. I don't care how fast you are.
Yeah.
Some guys just can't fight through contact like that. To me, that was Courtney Davis's when I saw this.
Let's go into Devin Duvernay, because this is a guy that had a ton of production at Texas. Most of it coming from the slot, free releases. Like we've always said that if Jalen Reagor played that position at Texas, he would have over 2,000 receiving yards or whatever it was. I don't expect this guy to have a good Senior Bowl.
I wouldn't be surprised either. I don't think he's that great of a route runner. To me, the comp I could put him in the draft guide was Golden Tate, because he does have very good ball skills. Like he has very good hands. Only a handful of drops his entire college career. I think three drops on 149 catchable passes the last 2 seasons. That's very good. But he did have more catches this year on screens than he had in all of 2018. He had 42 catches on screens this year. That was the most in the country.
That's insane.
That's just an out-of-this-world number. And so when you look at his production through that sort of lens of, he had 105 catches, 42 were screens, and he broke 23 tackles. 14 of those came after screens. It's just a little different, but he does have almost a running back-esque build, and I do think that he is still one, very good at the catch point, and two, very good after the catch. So those two things if you're going to be a slot receiver, those two things to be good at.
All right, we're going to go ahead and touch on one of my guys that I think is going to be a riser. We'll talk about him in detail later, but Antonio Gibson of Memphis. Ooh. This guy's a wide receiver, running back hybrid, similar to what kind of Tony Pollard was. But he's listed as a running back on the Reese's Senior Bowl website. Yeah. But he played mostly wide receiver at Memphis, played a ton of kick returner there too. He's a very versatile player, 6'2", 220, fast, I think very athletic. I wouldn't call him polished at any position, but he's very good at a lot of positions because of athletic ability. I think he's going to take some snaps at receiver, take some snaps at running back, and they're going to be guys that start to see him in this Tony Pollard role at the next level. I think Antonio Gibson's a fiery guy that could have some success at the Senior Bowl.
I think that's the future. Get a guy who's a wide receiver and has wide receiver skills, and then throw him at running back. Because that's a lot easier to teach than to teach a running back how to catch a football.
I reached out to him and I asked him, hey, I see you're listed at running back, even though I don't think he had more than 30 carries than at the running back position at Memphis. I will say this: if you reduce the attempt count, the attempt qualifier, and PFF Ultimate, you'll see that he has the highest forced missed tackles per touch of any running back if you have it at those carry count. And he's a guy that's very dynamic, forces missed tackles after the catch and when handed the football. And when I reached out to him, I said, "What are you going to do?" He's like, "I don't even know, man. I'm going to do a lot of different things." So I think the NFL teams will like him. I need to know where you're at with Van Jefferson. There are guys that are pushing him up to the top of day 2 and stuff like that. Van Jefferson, so I hear this about the LSU tape. Like the LSU tape, I think he had a handful of 2 good slants against Derek Stingley that he set up well with a couple outside releases and back shoulder catches. But you watch the first half of that game, watch all of his routes in the first half of that game before the third quarter drive that really spiked that LSU tape. He looks not good. He's not creating separation. He's struggling against Derek Stingley. I do not see a consistent separator in Van Jefferson.
Yeah, that's the thing is and I think his sort of production overall is indicative of that. 600-something yards this past year was the most he's had in a single season. Yes, he was starting all the way since his redshirt freshman year back at Ole Miss, and he put up more yards than DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown that year, who were true freshmen at Ole Miss. But I think there's also a reason why he transfers, because he didn't really improve upon that. To me, he doesn't necessarily vary the speed of his routes well. Like if he's running down the football field, it's 100%, and then he breaks on his route, and there's no real sort of feel for how he's setting up those downfield routes. And that, if you're just sprinting down the football field, all of a sudden the cornerback's going to be sprinting down the football field with you. If you're not varying your speed, you're not really selling the route. So I do think that was a big thing with him. And then he also is another guy who's old, already 23 years old, going to be 24 before his rookie season, but he's not strong. And if you're already old and not strong, it's a bad combination to have, because you had 5 years now in college weight room, and you couldn't put on enough to be like, to be probably should be at his size 6'2". He should probably be about 210. You'd like a receiver to be at that size, and he's not. So that's concerning to me. And
I've watched more of his tape beyond that LSU game, and I still run into those same issues where you're looking at a guy that there's a couple routes a game where you like what he's done, but it's so inconsistent. Like those wide receiver wins against press man or one-on-one coverage is so inconsistent that I find it hard to really gonna get on board with Van Jefferson.
To me, he's day 3 guy.
Yeah.
At this point.
All right. 2 more receivers I want to touch on before we go to the tight end position. Kalijah Lipscomb, before the season, I kind of like went head over heels because you see that there's this one reception he has in 2018 where he takes it on a screen and makes like 3 or 4 dudes miss on the same play. And I'm like, oh man, this guy is fantastic after the catch. Then you go watch Kalijah Lipscomb against Derek Stingley against LSU. Oh my gosh, dude can't create separation to save his life. It was a very, very bad tape, and you saw that all throughout this 2019 season. I do not see Kalijah Lipscomb as a guy that creates separation deep down the football field, and therefore I do not see him as a super valuable receiver in the NFL. Unfortunately,
he's a late rounder.
Will he have some splash plays at the Senior Bowl? I'll say yes, though. I think he will have some splash plays at the Senior Bowl.
I'm going to say no.
Beat on a corner or two. I think he ends up on one of those one-on-one.
I think the next
clips.
guy's got a better chance some splash plays.
Oh yeah, well Denzel Mims. The last guy we'll touch on here. Denzel Mims, a strider, limited route tree. He doesn't, his change of direction isn't fantastic, but he can get on dudes, and I think he wins at the line of scrimmage pretty well. I think straight line, Denzel Mims is a fantastic player.
Yeah, straight line and then up in the air.
Yes.
The dude can fly.
Oh man, the ball skills are good too.
Yeah, he can get over the top of cornerbacks, but he's that sort of. The comp I had for him in the draft guy is Braylon Edwards.
Oh wow,
he'll make that spectacular catch, but then he had like 11 drops last year.
Yes,
7 more this year. He'll drop the easy ones, which some guys just are like that. Like some guys can make a circus catch with ease and then put one in his chest and he doesn't know what to do with it. That to me is Denzel Mims. And then you mentioned the limited route tree is also the biggest thing. I need to see him run a little more varied, a little more nuanced routes here at the Senior Bowl to get on board with him any higher than 3rd round at this point.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the tight end position. It's overall not a very strong tight end class, and the Senior Bowl is kind of indicative of that. There's not a ton of great Senior Bowl talent at the tight end position. I think the favorite for you, I know, is Jared Pinkney, but man, does this have something to prove at the Senior Bowl? Because this production in his senior season was flat out bad.
I would say, what production? There wasn't any, dude. It didn't happen with him, but he had over 800 yards the season prior, back in 2018. Had some really big games that year. That tape didn't just disappear. We can still go back and watch that and evaluate him. And I do think that that's far more indicative of his skill set than what we saw from him this season. I think he'll have himself. He's on my pick for one of the risers here later on.
Drop your comp.
Drop my comp. Antonio Gates.
I'm sorry.
Maybe like Antonio Gates like 5 years ago, not like Antonio Gates 10 years ago.
I think he's like Antonio Gates 5 years from now. I kind of see a lot of that in Jared Pinkney. 3 other names I want to bring up in this tight end group. I think Harrison Bryant has flashed a lot at FAU. I don't think he's a bad player.
I thought he was very skinny in 2018. Well, I mean, I thought dude was skinny in 2018. I'm not gonna, and then I thought he actually put on a good deal of weight over the course of the offseason to make himself more legit prospect. Didn't actually lose any sort of explosiveness or speed. So that was very encouraging for me to see. I think he's definitely moved his way up our board here at PFF with his play this past year because he looked far more dynamic, far more. Just had some power to him after the catch. Broke 12 tackles this past season on 65 receptions. Went over 1,000 yards. So he's the most productive tight end in the country this past year. And he definitely has a chance to prove against some real linebackers there.
All right, 2 more names. Let's talk about Josiah DeGuara of Cincinnati. I've had some opportunity to cover the Cincinnati Bearcats a little bit and talk to Josiah DeGuara.
Lay it on me.
Leader. I'll say that first and foremost. He's a big leader in the locker room, commanding presence. This is a guy that brings the offense together. They started Desmond Ridder in 2018. He obviously played in 2019 as well. But DeGuara was the leader, not the quarterback. He was the guy of the offense. And DeGuara, so much production on play action boots. He knows how to find openings in zone. I think he's also pretty good after the catch. A guy that was a low-star recruit that goes to Cincinnati and has good production, in my opinion, in the AAC. I think he's a potential riser, not a riser to day 2 or this crazy, because he's not a crazy athlete, but I think he's a riser in how he'll impress scouts and what they can do. They see they can do with him on these play action passes and stuff. And that's what so much of the tight end position is. Find a guy that if you do put him in this role of play action boots, flats, and things like that can do something after the catch, you can start to get around him. I think DeGuara is one of those.
Yeah, I do think he's very hard-nosed and very very much a tight end that tight end coaches will love because he's all effort. Not nearly as talented as probably the next guy we're going to mention here as an athlete, but he works his ass off.
Yeah, when you talk to the San Francisco 49ers tight end coach, who I had the opportunity to speak with a little bit through Solomon Wilcots and John Embry, who's coached obviously George Kittle. He's coached others in the past, some bigger names. They're not coming to me right now. Mercedes Lewis at UCLA. He's saying one of the bigger things that he's looking for in the tight end position is like this effort, and because so much of that position after the catch is trying to be like this hard-nosed guy, and he sees that in George Kittle. I'm not sure if he's going to see that in DeGara, but DeGara I think is better than maybe what some are giving him credit for. Last guy, Bryson Hopkins. When we brought on Trevor Sikkema of the Draft Network, this was one of his favorites. A guy from Purdue, a bigger dude, I think 6'5", 245 pounds. The only concern we see from a grading profile standpoint are the drops. The drops have been a legitimate concern. I think over 10% in his career.
Yeah, well over 10%.
Yikes.
And I think it's at 10% every single year of his career he's over. So it's not just like, 1 year he had a bad year. You just know he drops a lot of footballs. It's something you're going to have to accept with him. But to me, he's a little bit more dynamic after the catch than someone like Noah Fant. Noah Fant, great in a straight line. Not going to shake you to save his life, really. But I think Hopkins has a little more shake to him. But, yeah, definitely 8 drops on 69 catchable this past year, 4 on 38 catchable the year before that, and then 7 on 32 catchable back as a sophomore in 2017.
All right. It's time to dive into the offensive line.
I just want to throw out Adam Troutman, the Dayton tight end. We really haven't gotten to him because we don't have the that All-22 just yet, coming soon. But he's a guy that I've heard from pretty much everyone that he looks like could be the tight end in this class, so we'll have to watch him.
Really? The top tight end in this class?
Dayton,
wow. All right.
Dayton
well, it reminds me of when we were waiting for Goddard's tape. We were waiting for Goddard's tape. I think that's it. There you go. He graded so well against the FCS. I remember we were doing the grades. That's funny. All right, let's go to the offensive line class and move on from the Dayton tight end here. Start with Trey Adams. Guy that's battled injuries. He's got some bad tape on his film. There's some games where you're like, man, I don't know if I could draft this guy on day 2. But there are some tools that you can like. 6'8", 314 pounds, long arms. Is some of the flaws coachable? Or are there things where if you could bring him in and he could be a starting offensive tackle in the NFL?
Yeah, I just don't. The flexibility there is a concern with me. He really, one with all the injuries piling up and that sort of thing, not going to help. But it just any guy with some speed really has given him fits over the years. And so I do think we've seen enough of him that I'm not sure if he goes over there and performs lights out, that he's all of a sudden going to shoot up our board. But I do think he needs to go there and perform like he needs to get himself back, because he was first-round conversation 3 years ago. I mean, if he didn't get hurt, what was that, back in 2017, he would have been in the 2018 draft. So I do think that he definitely needs to have a much, much better performance than we saw from at times this year, or else he might not even be, a second rounder at this point. He might be third, fourth round kind of guy.
Let's go to the Clemson offensive tackle, Tremaine Ankrum. He probably won't play tackle in the NFL, though. This guy's probably getting kicked inside, 6'2", 310 pounds. I think he had some very good tape at Clemson, though. I think he held his own well. I think going to guard at the next level gives this guy a better ceiling in the NFL.
Yeah, and he's one, when you're switching positions, it's always going to be important to see how you do at that new position. So I do think that watching him at guard in the one-on-ones, which I fully assume he's going to play guard, 6'2", he's listed at. So you better have, and he does have long arms for being 6'2", but not long enough to overcome that and still stay at tackle. So he did hold his own pretty well all the way up until the Ohio State game when he went up against Chase Young, but no one holds their own against Chase Young. So I'm not going to hold that one against him too much. Didn't give up multiple pressures in any game besides that Ohio State game all year long.
Moving forward a little bit here, give me Ben Bredeson. I think he's a guy that before the season, even in early parts of the season, there were draft scouts and pundits looking at him as one of the better interior offensive linemen in this class. But you've always been a little bit away from that take. You're not super on board with him. I know he's coming from a blue blood school. He's coming from this big program, but when you turn on the tape, you don't really like what you see.
He doesn't out leverage a lot of guys. He gets out leveraged. He's not a line of scrimmage mover by any means in the running game. Now, he's very technically sound in pass protection. That showed up this year. Only 9 pressures allowed all season long. But when he went up against a guy in Penn State whose names escape me, who's also Robert Windsor, he just got bull rushed a ton back into the quarterback in that game. 4 pressures allowed against Penn State because just high cut. I don't see the sort of power there to hold up against the bull rush. But he has played really well this past season. Did move up my board a little bit, but I still just don't see the power there that I'm going to covet highly at the guard position. He's probably, to me, more of like a 4 4th round kind of guy at this point.
Can we jump to Keith Ishmael of San Diego State? Big fan. I was talking to Eric Eager, our data scientist who works on a lot of the college to pro stuff, and he looks at how offensive linemen perform in true pass sets, which take away screens, play action, stuff like that.
The best ever?
Not the best ever.
Okay.
One of the better guys attending the Senior Bowl, and I think that's reflected in his PFF pass blocking grade. And going to San Diego State as well, you know, this guy's a trench warrior. And one of the few San Diego State players that is declaring early. I think this guy, I mean, Keith Ishmael, I
haven't watched them because I just, on principle, don't watch San Diego State. They don't have real prospects.
That's
so
where you're
wrong.
wrong.
Just assume that he's probably not that good.
Well, you're rude.
I'll let you guys know next week what I think.
Keith Ishmael. All right, let's go. I mean, Josh Jones. This guy's probably the crown jewel of this offensive line class attending the Senior Bowl. This guy has a chance to go in the first round, if not maybe even the top half of the first round if he has a good enough Senior Bowl. I mean, he's a mover up boards, very athletic, sloppy from a technique standpoint, but that can get coached up. What you're drafting is a very good athlete at 6'7", 310 pounds.
Yeah, who's already productive is also like a thing I think matters. If you, even when you don't have good technique or, you know, sort of textbook technique, whatever you want to call that, even when you don't, are you getting the job done? Are you finding a way to win? He has, you know, as well as, you know, actually better than any other non-Power 5 tackle we've ever graded in our 6 years doing this. So he has been utterly dominant this past season at Houston. Obviously got injured towards the end of the year, didn't play the last handful of games, but hopefully he's back healthy here at Senior Bowl because I think he's going to be making himself some dollars, similar to Andre Dillard last year, who went up some boards into the first round.
Let's go to Oregon. Shane Lemieux, interior offensive lineman, 6'4", 316 pounds. Oregon had a very good offensive line this year, and he was one of the bigger parts of it.
I think he's not going to be there. To be
really?
honest,
is he not going there anymore?
I think he got removed from the roster, unfortunately.
That is a huge concern. They're moving up and they're moving people in and out of this roster.
Shane Lemieux, though, I had to crack up on the very first play of the season. You flip on his tape, very first play of the season. He literally, so it's a screen. He literally grabs the defensive tackle from Auburn by the back of the helmet and throws him to the ground. I was just like, offensive line coach sees that, they're probably just like
all ready to go. Speaking of guys that offensive line coaches are going to fall in love with, Logan Stenberg of Kentucky, who's been like voted as like the meanest player in the SEC.
The most
they call him. I was reading an article, and I do a lot of the background stuff looking at these players for the draft guide, which you can see on the ticker below if you are watching us on YouTube. These are all the profiles that will be in the first edition of the draft guide for 2020 this offseason. But Logan Stenberg, they call him Mr. Nasty because the guy just beats up on dudes. I mean, this guy's a very not mean player. I don't think I think that has a negative connotation, obviously. But between the whistles and sometimes a little bit after it, this guy's a rude dude. And I think you don't hear a lot about an offensive lineman that trash talks, but they interviewed like his teammates and his coaches, and they said the dude talks trash constantly, and I'm all for Logan Stenberg.
He only gave up one pressure all season long. Now, they didn't pass a ton in Kentucky there.
With Lynn Bowden? No.
Lynn Bowden, but only one pressure is still pretty impressive on 285 pass blocking snaps.
I'm sure when Lynn Bowden got back there at quarterback, he's like, dude, I'm going to be run blocking all season long. Here we go.
He was licking his chops, but 14 penalties this past year and 10 the year prior. The dude is a walking liability from a penalty perspective, very much so. But it's because he's not going to let go of you. That's why. It's because you're going to try to lose. Try to get off the block, and he's not going to let you. Yeah. And then he's going to put you in the turf. I think I said in a previous podcast that he leads the nation in pancakes that just didn't matter whatsoever to the play.
There are going to be a handful of players talking trash at the Senior Bowl. Some of them you'll hear, and I think Stenberg's going to be one of them. And those one-on-ones, I'm ready to hear some trash talk from Stenberg. Last offensive lineman I want to touch on is Prince Tagovailoa of Auburn. I saw him against Clavon Chason, and I think there were a couple of reps that I really liked. There was also a handful where Clavon Chason beat him a bit. I think he's the guy that needs to improve from a technical standpoint significantly. A little bit more raw, though, and I even say compared to Josh Jones. I wouldn't even put him in the same level as Josh Jones.
He's not that level of athlete. He just doesn't have the quick feet. Like he's just is a plotter, and you can win as a plotter in the NFL. You don't have to be. I mean, Mitchell Schwartz, one of the best right tackles, if not the best right tackle in the NFL, had just got awful testing coming out of Oregon that he came out of. You don't have to necessarily be, but you better be pretty darn perfect in the rest of the stuff if you're not. And it's concerning that he took a step back for this past season. Pass blocking grade went from 88.4 in 2018 to 76.3 this year. So I kind of soured on him because I thought, he's the guy who hadn't played offensive line until he stepped foot on campus at Auburn, was a defensive lineman only for 1 year in high school, didn't really play football growing up. And so I don't know. I don't think the athleticism is quite there, and the fact that he's sort of plateaued is also concerning.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.